I can tell you that sometimes people who are continually in chaos professionally, you won't be surprised about their personal life. Not at home, not in their relationships, not financially. So, again, God bless you. We're all trying to get through this life. I think you got to stop looking at things that don't work for you, or start looking at things that don't work for you, and go, okay, I've done that for X amount of years or whatever, and I keep getting the same result. That's a good place to start right there.
Well, let's kick this baby off since we've had such good pre-podcast combo. Let's just get her going. So, Pops with Pops, episode 2, learning on the fly with our technology, our sound, our video, cameras, all the things. So Luke Popham, Matt Popham, kind of the context of this whole thing was conversations I get to have with my dad. Uh, what better way than just air them and to see where it goes of things we normally would have over the last 43 years of things as they come up. Maybe we call each other and hey, at this thing I'm talking, I'm thinking about, I'm contemplating on, or I have a presentation or a work thing, and we would have these conversations. And so why not have a podcast, and hopefully I can help other people as we go forward and do that. And and I would say again, from my perspective, with the underlying aspect of like really helping men, and it's funny because we talked about this before doing the podcast. We talked about it a little bit on the last one. I was listening to a podcast today. Somebody who podcasts all the time, they have an actor on, and the actor was specifically talking about how the fact he has a group of guys to get together because guys don't talk about their issues. They don't talk about personal growth. He was talking about this whole thing. And I was like, this is exactly where we were coming from when we first started this. So I think it's so great. And I was thinking about us hopping on today. And this is what I was kind of thinking about from your experience, right? Is I'm in the midst of Blair's in the middle of traveling to Thailand right now with our oldest daughter. I'm at home with our little 3, so we have 4, which is obviously, we're traveling together, you and I, and these 2 boys next week. We have multiple businesses going on. And so we get questions all the time. We're like, how do you have balance? How do you manage all this stuff? And I was like, well, first of all, there's no such thing as balance. And it's been a learned experience over time. But with you and I talking, I was like, who better ask this question about? Because I think when you're younger, with your parents growing up, you're just along for the ride. And then in retrospect, you look back and go, oh, well, that's what they were trying to trying to figure out as adults, and you're just a kid messing around. And I was thinking about this, and you'll probably get a kick out of it. I'm like, I would consider myself now a very early riser, extremely organized, anal about having my house a certain way, my work a certain way, everything in an organized certain way to make sure that I can operate the best in all these areas. And I was thinking back to growing up with you, and I was like, you could probably say it. That was not me. I would sleep in longer than anybody else possibly could imagine. My bed was never made, and now it has to be made, or I can't hardly leave my house. Uh, I would wait till the last second to get homework done, projects done, still get good grades, but it was always like just sheer chaos. And I was thinking about you, and I was like, I feel like you were the polar opposite. I remember going to your office as a kid, and it'd be like, you'd be the end of the day, or like I got to stop by the office, and you're like in files in a certain box, out files in a certain box, not one thing on your desk. I remember you talking about people at your office joking around about coming in and just moving your file folder over just to drive you nuts because it wasn't so organized. And so we were talking about the thought process about managing time, managing your life, quote unquote, trying to have some, resemblance of balance, which again is not necessarily possible. Like, what are some of the things that you found you had 2 more kids than we do, so it's 6 kids trying to go through a corporate job, relationships, all that kind of stuff. What are some of the things that found that you had to set up for yourself and organize to like even make sure that you could operate with some resemblance of clarity to like have progress or just sanity for that matter?
Well, first of all, you've got 4 kids.
Send a Christmas card.
I like to say there was a lot of genius in it. There isn't. You're gonna find that you have to do what works. If your life is a mess, it's because you're contributing to it. And there's things that people don't like. There's people who are just not organized, not even the slightest. They don't. They don't think about it. They stumble through life and oh whatever, and things get done when they get done and all that kind of thing. But for me, um, it's compartmentalization of things, right? Home is home, work's work, but every day is the same thing, right? Everybody in the evening, the kids are down. Me, your evening always seem to equate to about. You're lucky if it's an hour, right? You guys say, "Oh, we'll watch a show or something." Of course, you're dozing off a half hour into it, and gotta go to bed. And you think about the next day and what you got to do, but you have to think about things. It's to me, it's a mental to do list. I did it at work. Um, but you need to do it at home, right? Make your bed, do your thing, all these things in order, put things in order. To me, and some people it doesn't bother them, clothes on the floor, beds unmade, whatever, and they walk on out and they're successful people and all that. I would get apoplectic if that was the case with me. I'd be like, they'd have to come and, dart me and tie me up or something. But because if everything is disorganized in your life, it's tough. Like at home, work is challenging. Things are messy every day. It's nothing but a series of problems that got to be solved. We all get that, but someplace in there, you've got to find some sanity. To me, it was an organized house, a clean office. If I was working on something, I only have things out I'm working on. Okay. And that's just how my mind works. If I'm not working on it, I don't want to look at it. Why? Because it's going to sit there like a bad conscience going, did I do everything I could do with that thing? Then put it away, file it or electronically or whatever. You've done what you can do today. You might have it on your to-do list as you need something extra to finish that thing, but there's no use staring at it. It's not, you're not going to get to it today, or it's, it relies on some other effort tomorrow to move forward with it. So, I don't know. I just, I look around at people and whether it's their houses or the way they dress or the way they look and they're going, you are a hot mess, a complete and utter disaster, and I don't say that to people. I just look at them and go, I wonder why you're always getting in trouble for being behind and stuff. Look at you, they don't look like they, putting effort into dressing or, how they look or, there's just not anything about them that speaks to organization, and so there's certain things, like I said, your house is organized. You feel put together when you walk out the door. I mean, you just got to do a few things. I try to make sure my hair is just right, things like that. But I don't think there's a lot of rules to it. Other some daily discipline about little things, and like I said, you can't speak to everybody because some people it just doesn't bother them. It doesn't bother. But I still say this: it's rare that there's the messy person who's successful. They exist. I've met them. I almost admire them because they could just. It looks like a hoarder's house, and then they're still successful at what they do, and they're fantastic people, and they're nice people, and they do good work and all that kind of thing. But those are diamonds, really, you know. Yeah, because I just don't think people's minds can operate in chaos all the time. So whatever that's worth. Now
Right.
listen today while we're recording. I got a little edge.
That's what I like to get you on. I like to get you when you're fresh.
Yeah, because I got other things going on. But uh, so just watch yourself. That's all I'm saying.
So, all right. Well, when you say watch yourself, I'm going to take it in a direction that's probably going to get me get some. So, two questions. First one is, and I'm going to preface this with the fact that I said on the first podcast, probably one of the most well-read people that I've ever met in my life is you. And I know because growing up around you, is if I had to look something up or know the term, know the definition of a word, I was told to grab the dictionary. So to help out anybody listening, let's start with apoplectic. So give me the definition of
Yeah, it's
apoplectic.
just apoplectic is just you're so uh, emotional and out of control that you almost have a physiological uh, reaction to it. Yeah, yeah, and you've seen people like that, right? I mean,
Right.
they've come into your office and, oh my God, Annie M is a twister. It's a twister. And she's like, well, just got that look on their face. And you go, hey, man, hey, Scooter, settle down. If this is going to throw you sideways like this today on that item, this is a long effing life for you. Okay. So what is it? What do you want to do? I always tell people that. Okay. Well, what do you want to do? Well, I was thinking about this or that. Sounds reasonable to me. Why don't you go do it? Now, sometimes they come in, they don't have a clue, right? And that's, so you give them some suggestions, and I don't try to be rough on people about that. You always, you're appreciative of people seeking out your help, and you try to give them good help, but anyway, it's
Right. So that makes total sense. So let's take me joking around about apoplectic and ask for the definition and the idea of living in chaos. Do you think in your experience, right, outside of the diamonds, that those people that have some resemblance of chaos in their life, whether it's in their home or at work, are more apt to be apoplectic when it comes to what we would consider what could appear to be small situations, whether that's life or at work, that is almost like a manifestation of like chaos and like the other places of their life because they're not managed. Do you think
uh,
that? Do you feel like they're more apt to chaos emotionally?
I don't know. I mean, your mom is one of the she likes shit all over the place, and but she's highly organized and she's highly intelligent and she has very good self-awareness and she's emotionally intelligent, and we always joke about that thing. She goes, you used to come in my office, I'd be on the phone, you're going to take me to lunch, and you're sitting there rearranging my stuff on my desk and stuff. And she goes, I know where everything is. I know what it is, and so there are people who find comfort in the chaos too, and they're organized. I would go to some people's office and they would have stuff piled up, pages of paper and files and stuff. And I'd be like, why do you have it there? He goes, in case I need it. And I'm like, so, funny story about your mom is so I was, it's like everybody's got the stuff in their house, right? You got the junk drawer, you got the so they had this cabinet and it was just jam packed of stuff we didn't use. Okay. So I go to get something out of this cabinet, and back in the day, I used to go to all these girls' sales thing. Their friends were selling something, whatever, and it would be like login shites baskets or something like that. And I open up this thing, and all these baskets and stuff fall from about the third shelf down on me, just boom, 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 And I'm just like, ugh. If we get this thing cleaned up and stuff, and your mom's sitting across the aisle from me, and island, and she's going, okay, we'll do that, just throw a CD, shut the drawer 3 times, make sure your socks are on the same way, whatever, So it does, you got to kind of laugh at yourself. Whatever works, works. But I do think kind of reversing that question is this. I can tell you that sometimes people who are continually in chaos professionally, you won't be surprised about their personal life. Not at home, not in their relationships, not financially, uh, you know. So again, God bless you. We're all trying to get through this life, but I think you got to stop looking at things that don't work for you, or start looking at things that don't work for you, and go, okay, I've done that for X amount of years or whatever, and I keep getting the same result. That's a good place to start, right there.
Right. So reflecting back on like yourself, right? We could say that it's borderline OCD, and anybody that's around me specifically, potentially with the stuff in the house in a gym, especially if I'm owning it, having it, they literally will make fun of me as far as like how dirty if you walk in with dirty shoes. Like I have a level of OCD with the way that I like things too. Do you think now, of course, I know the backstory. Has it always been that way for you, or was it a learned skill, or do you think it's a byproduct of essentially growing up in a home that was a military home, somebody that was in the Air Force for 40 years? I mean, there is definitely a different level of organization from how you dress to how things are done. So I'm just curious, is it like always been that way because that's the way it was in your house growing up? and it needed to be this way, or was it, you think it was more of a learned experience for you as you got older?
Well, obviously there was some of that. It wasn't like my dad didn't come in and you know, come in and scream like the drill instructor or anything like that. But um, making your bed, having your room cleaned up, pick up the stuff. Not that I wasn't messy. Kids are kids. You do those things, but there were certain expectations. That you tidy up after yourself. So I think part of it is it's both. One's environment and part of it is just part of who you are. Now I find that it works for me. And I get really irritated looking at messes. For instance, we moved, and so I'm out in the garage this weekend going cutting up old cardboard, moving boxes and moving stuff around and cases upstairs in the attic, and the garage looked pretty good. Got a couple cars in there, got up. I was super proud of myself, because, hey, that looks pretty good. Now, it's not where I want it yet, but so I think, do people just ignore stuff? I think they probably do in their personal lives, all that entails, and professional lives. They're not really. Do you look over there? Does that not bother you? Does that not bother you? Is that, do you not see the siren going off, over here going, I remember having a person who was, fairly successful at State Farm. And he had an office with, I don't know if you've ever met anybody like this, but he literally had pictures and posters and certificates that went from about uh, a light switch to the ceiling on all the walls, And I remember going to his office one day and I'm looking around at it. And I know a lot of people use it kind of like trophies, they got things around, but it was just too much, and I was sitting in his office and I knew him pretty well. And he goes, yeah, you look around, he says, yeah, that's some stuff I like, to go on. It kind of speaks of some kind of mental illness. He was sort of like laughing about it. But for me, if I'm going to have something on the wall, it's probably going to have one thing on that wall. For him, it was a comfort level thing of stuff around him, and felt good about his stuff. So everybody's got the thing that makes them tick, doesn't mean they aren't good at what they do and all that kind of thing. But for me, I'm a behavioralist. Okay. So when kind of a human factor kind of person, when I watch people behave in a certain way, for instance, if they have a manner of speech, or they keep misusing a word, or they have kind of a tick that they have, that's whatever they're doing, and once you see it, you can't stop. You can't stop seeing it, right?
Right.
Yeah, I've even pulled people aside before when they're doing public speaking and go, "Hey, man, great, topic's good on it, but on the dead air, you don't have to make noise, and people do it subconsciously, So I don't listen. I'm not all that. I believe me. I got my issues. So I mean, things will be all right.
Yeah, and that's what I was just curious of whether it was learned or not. I mean, obviously, because for my whole life it's been that way, right? Growing up with you, it was like certain things, and the things that when I was younger, growing up, I've told you this on the phone too, where it's like as a teenager, you're running around playing sports, you're. I always think you're just really not paying attention as much. Plus, you're also not the one essentially running the household. I would be like, hey, why is he so bugged by this? And I definitely was in this situation of like, I was just giggling about this with, teenagers and kids that we have in our house too. I 100%, and you could attest to this, nothing's changed, but eating all the time, right? And so there was years of like, I can remember this conversation of like, there was pre-dinner, dinner, sometimes later, use a dish, rinse the dish or don't rinse the dish, then throw it in the right side of the sink. And the dishwasher is literally 14 inches from there. And I can remember these conversations with like, hey, do you see this from here to here? From here. here, take this down and put this in the dishwasher, and now my kids do the exact same thing. And there's nothing that drives me crazier than even finishing a meal or finishing cooking and everything's not to a T. And I said this when we started growing up, that bed was, unless there were people coming to our house, because usually my room was somewhere, near where people are going to come through. I was younger, the bed was not made. Clothes were on the floor. There wasn't, I slept in all the time, and then even through college, right? That's just how I operated. And as you attested to, did well, did well, and was like, I would consider myself a good student. Then even into business, starting my own business out of college, successful doing that and working hard. And then even organizing myself like within a schedule, I had to have this self awareness that, like, if I had clients or anybody that wanted to book something longer than 2 weeks out from me, unless it was like, hey, we're going to go on this fun hunting trip that's down in 3 months, that's going to hit the calendar. I would not let it on my calendar longer than 2 weeks because I had this sense of like, I like to be spontaneous, number one, and go and do what I want when I want. And that's number two. Uh, I didn't like to be, I felt like I was being controlled. So it was like, if I go further out than this, and this is an awareness. If I went out further than 2 weeks, it felt like something was in control of my future self, and I didn't want that. But the awareness that I had to have for myself was like, I actually had to get better at that and understand that the structure from my day to day process to my long term planning process had to actually have a system, because that discipline of creating some sort of organization, again, from my house, from my calendar, from all that stuff to getting up early to all that stuff, as I was getting into adulthood and trying to run and own businesses, actually gave me more clarity. It actually calmed me down, allowed me to work better, and then ultimately gave me way more freedom. But that was definitely a learned experience after even growing up in a household that was essentially structured, outside of my own room, which was chaos. But that's why I asked that question, because I had to learn that situation. So, and I have things now that are just, they're musts for me as far as making sure that there's organization with all of the things going on. So let's talk about, you talk about having a to-do list at home, having a to-do list at work. What were what are some of the things that, and I, now that I'm asking you the question, I know that I've seen it, but how did you do that at work? Was it the first thing in the morning when you got there? Was it when you first got up at home to set up your day for work? Was it the night before? How do you get it out of your head? Because if, like the chaos in your room or the siren off to the side or the clutter around, if you don't do something with it, right, it's almost like it's constantly nagging you. So what are like a couple of the things that you did to make sure that it wasn't just consuming your mind, but it was, essentially visual and made it so you could actually function?
Well, first of all, and it takes a few years to get used to this, is that you have to force things out of your head that are for work tomorrow. Otherwise, uh, you're eating up all of your evening with your kids and your family. Now, that it depends. Sometimes there's a hot issue, and you're really thinking you're actually, kind of honing your response or whatever it is, or just getting the emotion out of the argument, kind of thing. So you got to do that. But a lot of times, I would just tell you enough. I tell myself enough. I'm not thinking about that. I, you know, gotta rest. And the next day, I'm a big list person, so I have my items, great and small. Okay, it doesn't really matter. Um, but you write them down on a list, and I like something satisfactory about checking them off, striking them through, whatever the deal is. Uh, at the end of the day, what I would do is the items I didn't get to that I wanted to get to, and I know that they have some kind of time parameter to them, so they're kind of immediate, but not today. I would circle on my list. So I got ones I struck through, and I'd circle the ones, and then I come in the morning, I tear the sheet off, and I turn it upside down. I don't even look at yesterday's to-do list, and I start writing today's to-do list. And I think it's probably would work for anybody. Your subconscious is kind of amazing because I would flip it back over and those circled items would be on today's list plus new ones. And that habit, uh, well, I just did it for decades. I mean, it's funny how your mind works, you know. So, and there was something about the physically striking out something and circling the unfinished item that carried over to the next day without even looking at the list. So, you
That's
know, like,
interesting. I was just going to ask you. I'm like, okay, you took the circle items, flipped it over. Did you carry them over? But they naturally just came about. Um, as I was asked the question, I just had this like thought. I don't even know how old being in your office. Yellow legal pad, the yellow legal pad,
and blue ink.
and blue ink. Always. Do you still have it? I was just going to ask if you still. Yeah. Is there ever days? So obviously things come and go, right? So if that's the first thing that you do in the morning, was it pertinent that you got to the pad right away? Was there ever days that you didn't get to the pad right away and now it's like it's maybe get to the office at 7:38, you don't get to the legal pad and maybe it doesn't get till later, or is there ever days there's just so much going on you never got to it?
Yes, yeah. I mean, there are days that the stuff hits the fan, right, and so it takes your immediate energy and attention, and you just deal with it. It's something's a priority problem, and that's that series of problems that life is. You're just gonna. There are things that you want to do and you want to accomplish, and then there's a day that comes at you, and you've got to solve for X and do it. I, there are also things that I know if I carry it over a couple of times, I'm going, that mustn't be very
If it keeps getting pushed.
and so I just crumple up that piece of paper and start fresh because usually if it's kind of falling down the priority list, even though it keeps getting carried over, and you're going, I either am not that interested in it, don't have the energy for it, it's just not that important. So, you know, and that's usually how it is.
Well, energistically for you, I'm asking this as a because I have the way it is for me now, which I'll talk about. But like the days, and maybe they're multiple. Maybe it's just a one off where it just got so crazy you don't get to your pad. Do you feel like the days you got to your pad first? Do you feel like specifically, let's say professionally, right? Or maybe your list contains both things, personal and professional. Do you feel like you were more in control of your day, regardless of the things got thrown at you, if you got to your legal pad and had some organization? And then the days you don't get to your pod, do you feel like you're run more by your day versus you being in control, regardless of what's coming at you? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't think um, I operate like that. I'm not so rigid that that's just like a mental filing cabinet, right? So it's not like it drives my day. It's just things that I try to keep immediate things immediate, but I also pride myself on being able to handle the emergency. And so there's some satisfaction in handling emergencies, even though it threw you completely out the window. So, you still have organization there, and this day was a one off. And sometimes you have a week of one offs, that's the way it is, and then you get back to it. But it also makes you reflect on your list if you have a week or a day like that and go, well, those three things were not that important. I'm not wasting any time with it. So because you have that, there's a scale of importance that you put on it. Some need to be done, some need to be done, but not today, or they take some thought to really get through. So you kind of have it on your list to think, spend some time on it. And other things they would be nice to do, but they're not they're must do's,
Right.
so we got a few of those in there too. And I just I'd like to feel like at the end of the day I gave it a good effort, you know, tried to knock some things out. Some things went well. Every once in a while you get a day and you hit a home run, touch them all, Kirby pucket, you've done good. And you're so proud of yourself, you walk out it's really self-satisfied and all that thing. Then tomorrow's one of those shit days I just talked about. So, take your wins where you can get them. But
But overall, there's structure.
yeah,
Or
you
I
gotta,
asked
you
you
gotta
overall.
have, I think you do have to have structure on it. And I talk to people, I work, as you know, with attorneys, and I'm surprised that some of them, I tell them, look, use the electronic stickies, do what? You know, I, I didn't even know those existed. So, it's funny how people are, just anything, just anything that is going to keep your mind on task. You've got things you've got to do mechanically all day long at work. though they are just, it's like breathing. You gotta do them. Got to do them. The other things are things that you want to accomplish, and they have more of a strategic or aspirational feel to them, and so those are things you got to work on. And if you can spend a little time on them, fine. Thought, write some notes and stuff. But um, that list is always going to get reconfigured every day mentally. And like I said, the things that fall to the bottom of the list and they've been there multiple times, they end up being things that I feel like I guess it wasn't that important. You
It's
know,
good awareness. That's good too, because like there's that level of structure, but then the level of grace too. Like, okay, that wasn't that big of a deal, or I didn't get to it, no problem, but I was still moving forward with things. Um, and I've probably learned that aspect of it. So I talked about what I had to learn, as far as structure goes. So that's the majority of my days, working days anyway, right? So for me, okay, so let me ask this question before I say what mine is. Is there anything on that notepad besides just straight to dos for you? Is there any other habitual things that you like to write down that day
I
on that?
don't, I
Besides,
don't, I don't do habit things on it because you know what's my first thing in the morning? I'll have coffee. Maybe I'll check my phone or read some news or watch some, and then I go exercise. So I might go for a walk. Go to the gym every day. It's just my thing because it makes me feel better about myself. I don't feel right if I don't get to do it. So things like that are not even needed on a list. It would be very odd for me to write down work out, brush your teeth. So some of those things are just part of the who you are, and you just do them. So I try to stay away from things that are perfunctory. They're just day to day living things, and they're part of your personality and who you are. That's what you do. I try to think of things that are a challenge. They're immediate. They take a little thought process on them. Some of these things you just got to get after. That's it. Right now, get it done. Type thing. And some of them I got to think about the approach doing it. And so it's on the list, but it's on the list for me to write some notes on the side of the list about this, that, or the other thing. Maybe you're reflecting on something, maybe you're projecting something, and then you're thinking about how do I put that together, much like a talk. And part of it is a little mental, personal talk to yourself, right? So a lot of times in business, this you're talking to other people about what you want to achieve as a business, as an operation, personally. I don't really worry about the personal part because I think if you take care of those first two, the personal part is okay. It'll take care of itself. So that's why I don't try to put anything on my list that seems rather mundane.
yeah, you're gonna make me retool my list. So, like mine,
Got up,
what's
started
that?
drooling.
No, I mean not that mundane. Which is funny because like mine will be two-sided every day. So mine, there is mundane. Like the funny one that you said on there is like where I think there's something satisfactory whether you're crossing out or checking it off, right? So like one of mine on like I have two columns on mine. One side is there is now that you say that fairly mundane stuff or actual things that are going to happen every day. Working out being one of them. That's why I was laughing. I was like, I have it on there, but I already know if I'm a day that I'm most habitually working out. If I don't, something else, it's going to mess with something else for me throughout the day because, and yes, one off stuff comes, but for me personally, it has to happen, right? Just because it just makes everything else better. But that's on that checklist. But as you were saying that, I was like, why would you even? Because I don't have brushing teeth on there, but I do have working out on there just to check it off, right? So I was like, yeah, maybe I don't need that side of the list. Because then the other side is the exact same thing, right? Laundry list of things to get done or transfer over. And it's interesting. I liked your idea of almost testing the subconscious to see if it comes because I will have my whole list, and again, great days are checking off 12, 10, 12, 15 things in the day and I'm like, sweet, but I will go back the next day and then flip the page over and what are the things that didn't. So now I think I actually really want to try like just starting fresh because I do like that idea. Bottom part of mine, I think we talked about in the last podcast. I'd do 10 things that I'm grateful for just throughout the day, from small things to the bigger things in my relationship with my wife, to my kids sleeping all night, to whatever. I think I talked about that last time. But the other one for me too is it sounds, it's gonna sound funny, right? But it's like the other side is I'll go through the things that I want to be or that I think that I am for myself because I think it's funny you use the term behavioralist. I think because you've worked in a big corporate setting and worked intimately with people and helping them grow or, having to give tasks and do all that kind of stuff. I've been not only one on one, but grouped with people and having to learn by watching their behavior, just to help them progress either, nutritionally or with their health, or maybe it's somebody we're helping develop their business, right? So watching their behavior is going to give me clues, on how I can maybe help them progress. But what I do notice working with people and their behaviors is people just talk so horribly to themselves, right? And in my opinion, we expect the world or other people to tell us things to give us satisfaction, whether we're in shape or we're good looking or we're successful or, they're always going to
Oh,
feel
by the way,
good.
thank you.
Yeah. I'm not going to walk into that one and wait for you to tell me have to tell you thank you for my genetics. But anyway, what I was saying is, so then the backside of mine is the things that I think about for myself, right? Because I have this thought process that I have to tell myself these things first. As I'm saying it, I'm having that Stuart Little moment from Saturday Night Live because I'm good enough. I'm smart enough.
Gosh
And
darn it, people.
gosh darn it, people like me. That's a funny way of looking at it. However, I'm just like, I do think that that's watching people. They're waiting for the response from someone else in the environment to tell them XYZ about themselves. So the backside of my sheet is all these things that that I know for me first, and then
Well,
it goes from there.
I think for me, it's not a write it down thing, but I try to be the first thought, whether I'm stretching in the bed, just waking up or whatever. My first thought is I try to shove every other thought out of my head, and you know, I say what I'm grateful for. I say my prayers. You know, you know, uh, for all my family and things, and the things I'm grateful for, where I live, and the kind of income I have, and all the things you should be grateful for. We're not living in a third world, and so I try to start out the day like that, and listen, just like anybody else, in the middle of your grateful, you have things seep in, and you go off running, and you got to bring yourself back to the grateful, right? So that's just because there's a lot of something's using up your headspace, and it's really, your CPU is running at night, and so you get up and it's ready to go. But I do like to think about the things that I have rather than things I don't have, So I- you know, and I think, yes, I think there's people who look for affirmation too much, for me, too much, because, and I get it, and there's, like we talked about, there's people who need individual trainers, whether it's physical or work or whatever, and they like that environment. They like being instructed. They like being, they don't have to spend any energy at it. Luke's going to tell them, you know, all kinds of exercises to do, and they're going to do it this long and how far. For me, I was like, after a zillion years in sports and drilling and stuff, I don't really want to be told about anything. I just want to go, I know how to go do this or whatever it is. But people do that at work too. They just lean into you like, please tell me what I should be thinking. And you're like, uh, you're going to have to play along because you don't want to be emulating everything I'm saying to you. But here's the thing too, is the negative loop. You were talking about that, talking about in your head, right? Everybody's got it. I do it all the time, all the time, every day, all the time, you know, and, and I don't think it's necessarily bad. It just, you need to know when to tell yourself to shut up.
Right.
You just have to go, okay, enough of that. All right. Because you do have to like yourself. I know it sounds kind of weird, but at some point, if you survive this long in life, I think there's certain uh, attributes that you possess and things that you're able to do that you like. The only key here is not trying to overplay those strengths. Because that's the thing that gets you, because you get a little too full of yourself. Then the next thing you're walking away from a conversation going, oh man, I totally missed that kind of thing. So it's you know, it's one day at a time. It's not a gosh, I get up and I just got my stuff together. I really
Yeah,
do.
we're all trying to figure it out, right? Just trying to, and none of it's perfect. We're all gonna have, you got to find your own little thing that works. Those are just some of the things for me from a management or like trying to organize the chaos. Again, like we said, when we started, there's no, anybody tries to tell you that there's real balance. It's bullshit, right? Because
Yeah.
there's just always going to be something, again, whether it's personal or professional or whatever. But the little things, like, even listening to you talk about your notepad or what there, it's you, or even making your bed or keeping your house organized, or it's your car or whatever. It is the few things you ultimately can control, right? Because the rest of the world is going to throw you the things that you necessarily cannot control and you're going to have to deal with. So, I mean, in my mindset or if working with somebody, it's like, what are all the things you can control, whether it is your fitness or your nutrition or your time management and your structure, as many things that you can control, then allows you, and I just think it allows you the mental bandwidth and space to then deal with the things that you cannot control, right? Because then you're like, okay, well, all the things I'm responsible for, I've got checked off, or at least listed out as much as I could. So now the ones that I can't, I now can address accordingly. Because I feel like those other things, then they, like you said, they just, like the CPU is running or they're just weighing on you. But I do feel like if you don't do that, then it's just mass chaos across the board.
Yeah, I think you wear yourself out. But going back to family circus, all that kind of stuff, I'll tell you a funny thing. I think we were, it was September of last year. You guys were going on a trip or whatever. We were out watching the kids, right? And it was all good. It's all good. They got their stuff going on. It's just the way it is. But I remember at night uh, telling your mom, I go, how did we ever do it? I mean, and it's part of getting older too. I mean, but because, you're younger with young kids and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, it takes a lot of energy and you don't realize it until you've been away from it a little while. And you're going, wow. That's beautiful, but it's good. And one of the people should do, rather than, and you've seen this, I'm sure, with friends and people you've known who almost resent their life as a parent and a husband and stuff because all this demands on you personally. And in reality, you should just embrace the chaos, and it's all good. I mean, I don't know how many times I was slamming sandwiches together, taking off a suit and eating the sandwich halfway out the door to go to some sporting thing, and driving all over heck and stuff. But and that's just part of it, and you got to enjoy it. It seems like, wow, will this ever smooth out? But in reality, time wise compresses, and it's like people say, it is a short period of time in your life, and you should enjoy it because you notice this in your kids every 6 months. There's quite a change in personality and energy and communication and all that kind of thing. So you just throw it. Today's today. They're puppies today. So.
Yeah, I think when we were talking about this and I had that realization of asking you these questions, I've always approached it. I think just stepping into work chaos and things like trying to figure stuff out at a younger age. I felt like, trying to, whether it was starting a business or just trying to learn on the fly. I tried to look back on, the time with like you and mom and having to deal with all of that stuff with a lens of you're just doing the best that you could, right? Never with any, you run into people your entire life that they're still talking about my mom didn't do this and my dad didn't do that. And yes, for some people, there's some very extreme circumstances and it's totally understandable. But for the majority of the time, like I always feel like if you just would just realize that they were growing up trying to figure it out too, and they were doing the best that they could, that's all that it was? And was it overall good for you? Or, if it wasn't, then it's your opportunity as a parent, if you're going to be a parent, to take the lessons that you learned and maybe do them differently. But I was like trying to think about like, man, how hard was it? You have, big family like we do. And I was, talking to Blair the other day. I'm like, there was a segment, and again, I was never bugged. I realized, but like you worked what, 2 hours away from us for 3 years
Mhm.
every single day. And I was like, and I always felt it interesting because I had never held any resentment of it. But there was a 3 year, and I was in whatever, three, four, three sports every single season. And I was like, there was a season of life where 3 years in there because it wasn't like high school where you're playing later games at 7:30 at night. They were immediately after school. So it's a 3:30 game, a 4 o'clock game that you couldn't come to for me, any of them for about 3 years. It never bugged, but I was like, how was that for you trying to, again, manage life, growth in business, trying to, provide the best you could with your family? Was it stressful for you? Was there anything in there that you're like, okay, this helped me through all that, or just, hey, I'm just doing the best that I can, and it is what it is, and but I am moving forward. I was just kind of curious about that perspective because for me, I think that there's always a drive to be better at work. There's always a drive to, grow our businesses, create more for, my life with my wife, but ultimately provide more for our family. Um, but I think the thing that probably consumes my mind most is that I do think it's because the relationship I had with you and mom was I enjoyed my parents, and I do the best that I can to make sure that my kids enjoy my time together. Because I always went back. I tell everybody all the time, like even as an adult, I'd go back and all my friends came to my parents' house. All my siblings, it was the best time. Holidays, hanging out there because we enjoyed the time there. But the thing that consumes my mind the most is still trying to find those quality moments in the chaos with them because I enjoyed them so much. And so I was just like, how did you do that when you're, again, you're working like that? You still have a personal relationship with mom. There's like, irregardless of the kids, that's important. You got chaotic work, and then you have all these kids, all this stuff going on. Like, how did you manage all that? And was there anything in there that like stressed you out about that process? And I'm just giving you a small window because I was thinking back on, I'm like, man, that must not have been overly easy on you, and everybody has their own situations, but that one in particular, I was like, that was a decent run. It wasn't 6 months, it was years of having to do that. And I was just kind of curious on how that may have affected you.
Well, yeah, of course, occasionally, it bugs you that you had to miss some kind of event. Now, I'm fortunate that I didn't grow up with helicopter parents. I mean, that term didn't exist. And so, we were street lights come home, come on, come home, and or somebody's yelling down the street kind of thing. But they never missed any big event. They didn't come to practice and sit through practice and drive you. They didn't do any of that. Zero, no interest in it, nor were they going to do it. And but they came to all the games. They came to all that. And I've told years, when I was in high school and college wrestling and stuff, and I'd be hundreds of miles away, and my dad would say, "Well, call me if you get in the finals," or whatever. And I'd be getting called out on the mat for the match, and I look up in the stands, and there they'd be. So it gets me emotional just thinking about it because it was a really nice thing for them to do. But no, I think I didn't feel bad, or I didn't feel overly stressed about it, because ultimately I felt like I was doing the right thing for my family. Yeah, I was. You're bringing in an income. You're doing the right thing. It's hard work. Uh, reaps benefits, that kind of thing. So it wasn't really like that. And we, luckily when you got a good partner, that's what, it works out pretty good. If that wasn't the case, it would have been a mess for sure. It would
It's
be,
funny.
it'd be no good, you know, no good, no bueno. So, you got to think about that. In fact, one of mom's friends was here, and last week, and she's here for business, but they hung out, and she was going, yeah, I was thinking about, because she's now, her kids are grown, but she's separated because of work, and it's an interim type thing, but she'll get it straightened out. And she goes, yeah, you guys did it. And I go, well, over the whatever 35 years or something like that, almost 40, we lived apart as a couple collectively for 4 years because we had to do it. And is that stressful? Yeah, that's stressful. Has it put a strain on your relationship? It certainly does, because you know, sometimes phone calls get short, things like that, because it's just stress thing. But looking back on it, I'm glad we did it. We survived it, and it was the right thing to do. And our life today is pretty good, and it was all based on what I like to think of as commitment and hard work. So, and everybody's got that in their life. We're not special in any regard. Everybody's got something going on. And you don't know. That's why when you're talking to somebody, you don't have an idea what they're dealing with. And that's why I always like to talk to people. We're talking about work and this and that and the other thing. And I can just kind of hear a tone in their voice. How are you doing? Yeah, set aside all this stuff. How are you doing? What's going on? Well, and then they start telling you some stuff. And there's one, it's good that the people you want them to know that you care about them. But the also thing is, when you're in a work setting, it's better to know those kind of things, because the better you know people, the better the relationship is, the better the work is. So, it's, we're all just trying to get by. Everybody thinks the other guy's got it easy. Right.
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 Yeah. So that okay, with all that, like so if I'm as we kind of like get to wrap this up, if I'm let's say I'm working with you and I come, again, this was kind of wrapped in the context of like trying to figure it all out, trying to create some sort of management with yourself. I come to you, let's say you're my boss or a coworker at work, and I'm like, hey, I'm trying to just figure all this out. I'm trying to manage my personal life. I'm trying to grow in the company. I have all these projects I'm taking on. Is there anything in particular, like one, two, or three things that if you're giving advice to somebody, like, hey, these are some things that we talked about the list, but is there anything else besides the list that you feel like really help people out with? We use the term time management. I'll use the time as like just managing your capacity. I think that even the list alone opens up, like I said, that discipline of doing that for me created the freedom. So it ultimately creates more capacity for more things because now I know where it's compartmentalized, right? So then now I have more compartments to be able to fit space into. Is there anything else that you kind of over those years of 30, 40 years working with a lot of people in that setting that try to pass on of like, hey, this might help you manage your time a little bit better to give you a little more space to breathe to ultimately be better in XYZ?
Yeah. Well, it's particularly in the electronic world, I tell people, do not open your email right away. I mean, go ahead but minimize it, because there's something on your mind about work, the core part of your work. Now, I know email's part of your work. I understand that. But there's always some project or something, or today you had to get something done, or this week it's got to be finished. You should spend some time on that while your energy is high and it's the beginning of the day. And, maybe you have a cup of coffee and your mind's a little clearer, spend your energy there, then look at it. Now, you can't always do that because something just egregious happened and you've got to dive into it, and that's the way it is. We'd like to problem solve too, but you shouldn't let email drive your life. It's like scrolling online.
I was gonna say we
You
probably
go
could
to,
say social
you
media.
go
Yeah.
down that rabbit hole, and uh, I'll pick up an email and somebody, because either they seem irritated or their tone is off, and then maybe I just run with that whole thing, and I try not to do that. Sometimes I look at some and go, that doesn't need an immediate reply, you know. But I do think you should think about the things that are important to you at the beginning of the day when your energy is at the highest it's going to be all day, and do something on the important things on your list. So, then you can deal with it. But there are other days that, just like I said, they just go to S, and that's that. And but sometimes you just find a lot of enjoyment because you were dealing with the chaos and you dealt with it, and you didn't ever get to your list, but you go, that was a good day. I took care of a problem. So. Take your wins where you can get them.
Yeah, get some satisfactory, get a win, get a base hit, and then move on. Okay, so social media, yeah, right away out of the day, there's not usually not going to be something great out of that. Checking your emails, anything else. Again, if I'm sitting across from you, they're like, hey, let's take a look at this. Without diving in, again, everybody's a little bit different, but those things are, again, making a list, stay avoiding some of these things in the morning when your energy's high. Anything else when you've been working with somebody as they're really trying to improve,
Yeah, I think you
at a
should
point
keep.
helps them.
Yeah, sorry. You should keep a list of things that are bothering you because you don't know how to do them or you don't do them well. Could be a system, could be a process, could be a operating system or whatever it is. Saying, why? I'm struggling with that thing. Write it down. Write it down, and then you can put that on your to-do list, at least one of them, about learning how to do it better. Ask people, hey, I'm always struggling with this. How do you do it? Do you have a problem with it? Yeah, I do, but this is what I do to get around it. Start talking to people about, get input about how to solve for the X, and but you should think about the things that are continual irritants in your work, and not just go, God, every day, and then move to the next day, same thing. You should find a way to solve for it. And then, if you do a little bit every day over a period of time, pretty soon those things just fall off the radar and you'll be months down the road and you'll just see, you'll kind of think back on when you struggled with X and you're going, yeah, that doesn't even exist anymore. That's good. Yeah. And so, but you have to think about those things because we have a tendency to just go be frustrated. Well, there's a lot. It's just take that as a problem that needs to be solved. And generally, it's just because we don't know how to do it. You know, there's a way around it or a way to ameliorate the pain of it. Some especially on a system where people are all doing the same thing. How do you do it? Start talking to people. I'm really
Somebody's feel it.
somebody's good at it.
Yeah, and I do think, like we talked about from the very beginning, the premise of, from my experience working with guys, less apt to ask the question. Got
Yeah.
it, got it figured out. If I ask a question, do I feel dumb? Do I, like there's something in there. It's a weakness about asking a question on that. So I do think that asking that question is having the balls to ask the question is important. Because people that are good at it are probably going to be excited to help you.
Well, and the
Uh,
other thing is not having an answer for everybody either. This is something that came from my dad. I'd be like, fired up about something and know how it is. And he'd say, I'm not sure I have an answer for that. Let me think. And he would always come back to me with it. And I don't know if part of that was managing the emotion of it, or he was truly just wanting to think about it. But he always did circle back and say, I was thinking about that thing you were talking about. And, I would suggest this, you know, and he's usually pretty right on about it. But it's a good habit to be in with not solving people's problems in the moment. You
yeah. Yeah, that's pretty. Again, I was just thinking about, like, this profession also probably required a lifelong learning of that in high stress situations too, for sure. Uh, based on the last one I was going to ask you, based on the amount that I know you read, right? Probably 1 to 3 books going, right, at all times. Is that at any point of a recommendation when you're just chatting with people and helping them improve and grow? Does that ever show up in the conversation? I do think that it doesn't get utilized enough personally. As whether like personal growth, just overall, again, whether it's for entertainment or it's trying to solve a problem or it's trying to be better. Does that show up when you're giving people, some resemblance of advice from experience? Has that for you personally helped grow you through all of these years in life and in business?
Yeah, I just tell people, listen, I like to read, and I tell them why I like to read. Part of it is to calm yourself down at night. You can read when you go to bed, and you get sleepy, and rather than sitting in front of the little blue light on your iPhone. But you learn a lot from people's writing styles. You learn a lot of vocabulary that maybe isn't normal to you. And you got to be naturally curious. Look up words. What does that mean? And all that kind of thing. And so, yeah, I tell people all the time. there's so much. Well, my short story to that is there's so many books and so little time. And but I generally have a couple of books going. Maybe I'm listening to one, so there's usually like three going on. And sometimes I have to calm down. I just go, oh man, you just been going plowing through these things. You got, maybe I'll go for a month and just have one at a time, um, but you have a lot of dead time in your life, whether you're riding in the car, you're working out. I like podcasts. I like books on tape, Audible or, whatever. People have Kindle, or it wouldn't be Kindle, but, Audible. That's, you get through a pretty decent sized book in a week or two, just going to the gym, and you learn about things. So that's my thing. I just can't imagine somebody not reading. It's just, you know, I don't care if it's cartoon books, let's just do something with it, because I think there's something too about, I like, I've had, electronic readers and all that stuff, but I do like the tactile part of books too. So I have electronic ones and I have paper ones.
Yeah, the physical nature of actually turning the book. I'll do Audible as well. Podcasts. There is something different, I think, in the action of actually turning pages and reading. And
Putting the bookmark in at the end of
yeah,
the thing, going,
exactly.
talk about that little achievement, get right to the end of the chapter.
Yeah, moving
Look
on.
at me.
And I think the thing that I'd add too is, again, like you said, you don't have enough time in your life to read all these books. You also don't have enough time in your life to gain all these experiences.
Right.
So I know for you, I know you did a lot have done and will do a lot of autobiographies. I'm fascinated, by that aspect of I do very little, probably just fiction reading, occasionally, but I love the autobiography, learning from somebody else, taking somebody, just even this conversation with you, taking 40 years of work life experience and condensing it down into a podcast. Because, could I reap the benefits of just even a fraction of decades of experience to that? Now I don't need decades to gain two or three conversations, and I think that's the same thing with reading. I'm like, you just are not going to have enough time to gain those in your own experiences. So why not try to learn them from somebody else who's done well, and that includes too, if you like to watch stuff. For me too, it's very satisfactory if in the downtime to spend more time on a documentary, whether that's an athlete or someone else, and just trying to see something of a pattern of like, oh, that's why you did it this way, or that's why you're successful. I do think it moves you forward too.
Yeah, I think that mainly it's they're really normal or average people who have done
Extraordinary things.
right, and
Right.
that's the thing. And they hit their groove on something, and they went with it and stuff. And sometimes even they've surprised themselves by their success on something. How many times have you seen things like that? But I'm still looking for mine, but it'll be it'll be huge when I get it. So
When you hit it. But I also think that, yeah, it gives you some level of confidence. There's somebody in the thousands of years that human race has been combing this earth. You're not an anomaly. Everybody else has the same amount of time in the day. More people have started with less than you have and have accomplished more than you have had more chaos in their life than you have. So I always look at it from that way. Like, there's somebody that's done better than you with worse than you have. And so I do like that from the aspect of give you a little self confidence of like, no matter where you are in your chaos, somebody's had it worse with more things and still accomplished more. So why not try and figure it out? Because that part of curiosity, I'm like, how did you pull that off? Um, which I think is great too. Well, time number 2, crush the technology. Cameras worked this time. That's a win. So as we get going, I know we've had a list of people we'll have on here too. I'm excited. I've got a couple of them that have been like, well, I want to get on there with those guys. So not always listening to us, but stay tuned. We're gonna have other other people on with some interesting experiences, which I think will be fun to pick their brains. And I know we're excited about that too. So
well, they better bring their A game, or we'll just talk to ourselves.
that's true, and we'll be fine. We'll be okay. All right, pops with pops,
All right,
episode
man.
2 in the books. We'll talk soon.
All right, love you.
Love you too. See ya.